Hello and welcome back to another episode of Tech Champions. I'm your host, Daniel Beaty, CTO with AuditMax in Jacksonville, Florida. As you know, we take time each week to sit down with thought leaders and industry experts in the field of technology. We learn about their journey and their mission and get their take on the latest trends in the industry. We always have amazing guests on the show, and today is no exception. Joining us from Atlanta, Georgia is Keir Bradshaw. Keir, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks so much. Great to be here.
You bet. Glad to have you. So, Keir, you are currently the EVP at Merge in Atlanta, but I know you spent a lot of years in graphic design, web design, and some time here in Florida. So, I went to FSU, right? All right. My son's actually a sophomore there, so go Knowles. He's loving it over there.
Hoping we can turn the program around on the football side. It's been a rough couple of years, but still garnet and gold all the way here.
Sure. All right. Great. Yeah. Actually, the basketball team's doing all right this year. So
doing good. Yeah. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your personal journey to this point.
Yeah. So it is a little bit atypical for someone who's in leadership and technology, in that I really did start. I mean, my degree from Florida State, my bachelor's at least, is as a graphic design art major. And coming out in the late 90s, I really focused mostly on print design, direct mail, things like that, things in the marketing space and the outreach, but very, very focused on print. But as most people at that age, especially around that time, you do a lot of freelance work, trying to start your own businesses. You try to be all things you can be to your clients. And I think what we saw was just kind of an emergence of more and more communication in the late 90s being primarily digital. So started to move in that direction. And, once you start to unfold that, that onion, you start seeing things that are being done that you just can't do in print. You start seeing opportunities for interactions with your end user that, in a print-based world take lead times of weeks, sometimes months, or even years. And you're seeing instant data. You're, seeing instant interaction points. You're seeing instant feedback. So that really, really spoke to me as far as how technology can be used to connect to people. Then there was the business side of it, running a business that takes into account mail costs, print costs, overheads and inks, and then talking to your friends who you went to school with, who they're like, I put a server in my closet and, I've got like $9 a year in infrastructure costs and everything else is just profit. Starts to make you wonder, did I choose the right business? So, I think it still happens today a lot, but a little bit of just kind of one thing leading to another, more and more just seeing these opportunities and finding that, okay, great example, doing mostly table-based websites with, old font tags and whatnot, and seeing something in the market and saying like, what in the world did they do? And that was, this was late 90s. So they're using cascading style sheets, they're using CSS. Great. I need to do that too. Hearing about a CRM campaign that you're able to actually take the data coming into the website and categorize people in a way that you can better communicate with them. Great, I need to do that too. So I think that iteration and kind of ideation and technology is really what drove me more and more into this field. And it's really led me to what I do at Merge today. So as the EVP of technology, I work to help identify new areas of growth, new business opportunities, working directly with prospects and clients to grow their businesses, helping to set our general direction when it comes to the platforms we use, the technologies, our approach. But ultimately, I always go back to that idea of human connection, and that's really what technology is meant to do, is to facilitate a transaction of some sort. And that transaction can be as simple as, I want to know more about you. So I'm going to go to your website and I'm going to view information that you've given me in a way that's easy to read, clean architecture, a design that's representative of the brand. It can be something so complex as, I'm trying to purchase, or connect with a contractor to completely redo my home in a concrete composite siding, or my child is ill and I need to know what options for care I have at 12 o'clock at night on a Saturday. So in all of these cases, though, the technology really helps facilitate the communication, and I've found that has been one thing that we've never changed, right? As we move through and just even looking into artificial intelligence now, and really cool, innovative experiences around augmented reality, obviously, focus on voice search, it's still ultimately the same thing. How do we connect people to content and to information in a different, better way than we can by simply handing them a flyer or pointing them to a radio ad or a TV ad? And you see evidence of that if now everything, regardless of the media, points back to technology. TV ads, they got the 1-800 number, but there's the website. Print, everything's going to a campaign page. So it's almost come full circle. It's been a fun ride.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's and super interesting. What I've noticed too is just the pace of change when it comes even just to web development. And it used to be, right, back in the day, you built a website, you were super happy with it, and you would let it kind of ride for 2 or 3 years, and then somebody would say, hey, you might want to change some graphics around. And now it's like, if it's a year old, it's old. So
it's old. It's old.
Yeah.
It's a great point. It even changes the way we advise clients to invest. I think we did, that 3 to 5 year kind of huge Herculean like investment of time, money, sweat equity has been not totally replaced, but somewhat replaced with this idea of you need to be continually investing, right? There needs to be iterative improvement over time, that when you look back at the end of a given year, to your point, the website shouldn't look exactly like it looked a year ago. And that's not necessarily we've redesigned it every year, but how are we reacting to that real-time data to make it better?
Yeah, that's great. So changing gears just a little bit, the pandemic, hopefully, cross your fingers, is winding down a little bit, or starting to.
Getting there.
And I know everybody's excited about that, right? But you had a pretty bold statement, I thought, about the pandemic. You said it drove a revolution, was your phrase, in healthcare IT and marketing technology. What did you mean by that?
So, been working in healthcare IT and marketing technology for most of my career in different facets, really focused over the last 15 years for sure, working both within provider systems as well as with Merge, with a real focus on our healthcare and provider IT and MarTech lines. And there is a different world of how users look at what we do when you're talking about their health, or the health of their child, or the health of their loved one, whether that's preventative wellness or in the state of need of care. That we have more flexibility in how we communicate with people when we are trying to get them to order a pizza, or we're trying to get them to choose a specific product, say like an LG versus an other, and understanding that causes a certain drag that put us a little bit behind in how we provided connected experiences, virtual experiences, remote experiences to our end users. And there was honestly hesitant, and I'd go so far as to say a good, healthy dose of fear in healthcare leadership teams of moving too fast. The most common question we get is, who else is doing this? Can we see where it's successful already and just do what they did? Because we feel comfortable with that. That's a safe approach. That's not innovative. That's not the way that you really create change for your consumer base, because you're basically lagging by definition there. So what we saw in the spring was suddenly, specifically marketing and healthcare IT teams were put in a completely different scenario, with questions around, with the rise in the pandemic, of how do we safely provide care to our constituency, to our patients, to our community members, provide wellness information when we can no longer hold in-person seminars. There's fear around coming in to do simple mechanical maintenance type things, such as physicals, teeth cleanings, wellness visits for children. There was a sense of fear that we have moved to a much better spot with that, but it created a catalyst for what we do as far as digital outreach, communications, and interactions with people. So what we saw was a total mindset shift in the part of hospital leadership from, we're concerned and cautious of doing this, to how quickly can we get to a point where we can increase virtual visits, we can see portal adoptions for communications with physicians go up, utilize the website, not to just talk about services, but talk about the safety, how safe it would be to come in and actually receive care, that ultimately that preventative care causes, or really prevents disease, right? It's not, you don't get a physical just to see how you're doing. I mean, these are opportunities to catch, real serious disease at an earlier stage, or even prevent them from occurring at all. And without that care, we're going to see a public health crisis in the future that we maybe don't yet fully understand. So what that all culminates to is now marketing is not simply being asked to, how do you increase volumes within a primary care service line? Or how do we better facilitate a more frictionless experience when somebody signs in online to the portal to get them to their appointment? All those things are true. But now marketing and IT are sitting at the table with operations and finance saying, how do you guys, right? We're now looking at you. The spotlight's on marketing and IT. How can you solve problems with the business that are caused by the pandemic? Now, what we're finding is now that we are reaching the hopeful ebb of that pandemic, that idea of connectedness, of marketing's role as a strategic leader, of IT's role as a real tech innovator, that's maintaining. Like, we haven't lost that as we're moving into a world where people feel more safe to do, traditional activities in healthcare. So hopefully that revolution equates to evolution, right? That's what we want. We want to evolve and truly digitally transform our operations, not just putting stuff online, but actually changing the way that people think of their interactions and what they come to expect from us as healthcare providers and IT professionals.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's phenomenal. And you mentioned something there, that truly connected UX. So talk a little bit more about that. What does that look like? Was it just pandemic driven, or was it coming before that? And what are the real advantages to the people like you and I?
That's a great question. So I think it was coming, and actually I think in a lot of ways it's already here. So what we were seeing prior to the pandemic, and it was kind of like, it was galvanized, it was accelerated, just like everything else digital, was a shift of expectation, where when we would talk about these really truly connected experience, like you think of the Amazon experience, right? Where Amazon's collecting so much data, for better or for worse, about us, and it allows them to suggest services, products, to interact in our lives in a way that we start to allow kind of our walls of privacy to come down in the name of convenience, in the name of doing things easier and doing them better. We weren't seeing that in healthcare as much. Then we started seeing it in what I would call less than premium brands, right? So Amazon's doing it, Google's doing it, these big premier brands, well, of course they're doing it, like it's Google. Well, we started seeing, as a result of the pandemic, U-Haul doing it, Walmart doing it. So these are very powerful brands, very, very successful brands, but not necessarily seen as consumer premium brands. So if you think of the U-Haul experience is great, right? So when I think of, at my age, going to get a U-Haul, I'm thinking of, it's probably in a gas station. Maybe it's in a storage facility. I'm going to go in, they're going to hand me a greasy ballpoint pen, and I'm going to fill out a triplicate form and scan my, and 45 minutes to an hour later, I finally got my truck. Flash forward now, it's an app. It's a touchless experience, and the touchless experience involves me going, my truck's already been preset for me in a specific spot. I'm doing my walkthrough by taking pictures and hitting selections in the app, and in the end of the day, I'm given a key through a vending system. Why would we ever go back to the greasy ballpoint pen in the storage facility now that we've done that? So we're seeing a raise in expectation of what people are experiencing in everyday brands, right? In picking up their groceries and in renting a U-Haul, and simple experiences have now been digitized to create touchless. So now we're seeing that expectation being translated into a healthcare setting. So when I'm scheduling an appointment and I've given you information online, why do I have to give you that same information again when I show up for my appointment? You should know that about me already because I've given it to you. It's going to affect how I see your brand, and it's ultimately going to affect the satisfaction of my experience if those systems aren't connected. And it's not the consumer's problem, if you will, that your electronic medical health record and your scheduling system and your website aren't connected. That's our problem. So what it means to marketing and IT professionals is we're now looking at solving these problems in different ways. We're looking at working together with clinical operations, with hospital operations, with scheduling, with scheduling centers that for years have basically been telecommunication hubs. Well, now we need to combine anything. It doesn't matter if I fill out a form, if I've done it through the online portal, or if I've called a phone number. Everything is expected to be connected so that when I show up the appointment, not necessarily to the concierge level of, hello, welcome, we've been expecting you, white glove treatment. But simple stuff like, okay, I made the appointment, I'm here. You should already know why I'm here. You should already know what my medical history is. You have all of that. And so that sense of expectation is just changing the way that we're presenting information and then utilizing that information safely internally.
Sure. Yeah, it all makes perfect sense. And as consumers, we get used to certain things, right? And we kind of get spoiled to some degree. Why, if I have this experience over here at Amazon, why can't I have it everywhere? So, and
Absolutely.
you mentioned a couple big tech names there, and I know that you think the next big disruption in healthcare is going to come from one of these big tech companies. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I do. I do. Yeah, this is something that I'm actually pretty passionate about because, we've seen it in other industries, first of all. We've seen it in financial services. We've seen it look at Uber, great disruptor of the consumer transportation industry. And some of the same signs are there. But really and truly, I mean, the writing's not only on the wall, it's kind of happening. So there's two big drivers that make me really feel like in the next years, I wouldn't say the next years, we're going to be talking with our healthcare clients as much, if not more, about what Amazon and Google are doing. And for that matter, what Walmart's obviously a huge brick and mortar, but Walmart's digital presence is immense now. I mean, they have gone digital to the point where they are reconfiguring their physical locations to better accommodate wayfinding through their app. I mean, you think about the investment that they're putting to change the physical experience to cater to the digital, totally different way of thinking about things, right? So I would put Walmart into the digital category, into the tech category, just as I would Domino's Pizza, right? So almost we have to first reset our thinking about what a big tech company is. And it's not always Amazon and Google, but it is Amazon and Google. So if you look at their investment, just fun facts about Google, they have 57 or more health startup companies right now. They don't talk about it much, but it's in clinical research, it's in benefits and management. So now we're talking about the payer side. It's in clinical research, and how we connect that information to clinical care. They're investing really, really large into this infrastructure to create basically Google as a healthcare entity. And Amazon's already there. So if you Google Amazon healthcare, you'll be taken to Amazon Care, which is very quiet. And if you think about how loud Amazon typically is, like how much information, how much money they spent into advertising same day delivery, into when they moved into their partnership with Whole Foods and suddenly become a grocer as well as a retailer, how loud that was.
Right.
They're very, very quiet about what they're doing in healthcare, but you can today receive as your primary virtual healthcare services directly from Amazon. It's already happening. And so what we've seen with these industries, Amazon specifically, is they follow brick and mortar, and their whole philosophy is how do we do this better without the brick and mortar? So if you look at everything they've done into online shopping and other industries, other major providers like Walmart have had to catch up. They're doing that in healthcare, and there's no reason to think they wouldn't, because I'm as likely right now, to be perfectly honest, if I'm not feeling well on a Sunday, to go to a Walgreens or a Kroger as I am to go to my local provider's urgent care. Right. So Amazon sees that. Everybody sees that. And then the millions they're investing means that at some point, we're going to wake up one day, if we're not looking ahead, and say, oh my gosh, like 30% of my business is now going virtual, and it's not going virtually to me. So that's something we have to be ready for and brace for, because you can't stop Amazon. All we can do is anticipate and plan and strategize around how are we going to come up with something that equates to our version. And what I can tell you this is convenience is the key when it comes to Walmart and Amazon. But what we can provide with a health system brand, like Baptist of Jacksonville, they're in Jacksonville, or a major provider like Baptist Health South Florida, VCU Health, Advocate Aurora, these huge names that carry such weight, is there's a certain level of trust there that Amazon has not created yet, that Walmart has not created yet. So leveraging that trust and creating the same level of convenience is going to be a key strategy to how we prepare ourselves for that disruption.
Right. No, that's great. And I really appreciate your insights on that. That's been great. Keir, really appreciate it. Hey, let's end with this last question. I love to ask all of my guests that come on Tech Champions, what's a characteristic you think it takes to become a tech champion?
I love this question, and honestly, I mean, I love the name Tech Champion, because we throw around all these, evangelists and kind of different words, but a champion to me, when I think about it, I think of someone who really is, standing on the soapbox, shouting to the crowds to try and help change the hearts and minds. You think of the more classic metaphor of the knight in shining armor or the warrior. And I think that's true in what we do. So it's, I think you have to be almost immune to a fear of failure to be a tech champion. You have to be really willing to try something knowing that it might not work, and be looking for ways to fail safely, and then dust yourself off, get back up there, and then apply the same level of passion to the next iteration, your next attempt. And I think in the end, though, all of that innovation and all of that just bravery has to be driven by this underlying understanding that our job as technologists is to serve a need, right? When we get into trouble and we're not being tech champions is when we're making the next cool widget because we really, really want to. We want to make the whiz bang thing, right? Great tech innovation, the true champions, are open-minded educators who are trying to see a problem that's existed for a long time and solve it in a new way that leverages technology as the solution, doesn't make technology the point of the solution, if that makes sense. So that's, I mean, it's a big answer, but man, you set a big high bar when you call that a tech champion. So I think that's kind of what comes to mind when I think about a tech champion.
No, that's awesome. That's a fantastic answer, Keir. Really appreciate it. Hey, just as we're leaving here, if people want to learn more about you or Merge, what's the best way for them to find you?
Everybody else, I'm on LinkedIn. Look me up there. But www.mergeworld.com. That's probably the best way to learn more about Merge, and then my contact information is there as well.
Okay. All right, Keir Bradshaw, everyone. Thank you so much for being on the show. Really appreciate it. Wonderful insights. Love how you blended, the technology with the real world and us as human beings. So fantastic job today. And thank you to our audience for tuning in. I'm your host, Daniel Beaty. We'll see you next time on Tech Champions.